Miss Amy's Math.
So you've already learned that the square root of 5 when squared is equal to 5, and that the square root of x when squared equals x. So let's keep that in mind as we work through example 1. We have the square root of x minus 2 equals 6. The first thing we always want to do when solving this type of equation is isolate the radical expression. So we'll add 2 to both sides of the equation. We have the square root of x is equal to 8. Our next step will be to eliminate the radical. So if we square both sides of the equation, we'll end up with x is equal to 64. For example 2, we want to solve the equation 2 times the square root of x minus 3 equals 18. Our first step is to isolate the radical expression. So we'll divide both sides by 2, and we get the square root of x minus 3 equals 9. Our next step is to eliminate the radical. So we'll square both sides of the equation, and we get x minus 3 equals 81. Our third step is to solve for the variable. So we'll add 3 to both sides of the equation, and we get x is equal to 84. For example 3, we have the cubed root of 2x plus 5 plus 3 equals 0. Again, our first step is to isolate the radical. So we'll subtract 3 from both sides of the equation. Our next step is to eliminate the radical. Since we have a cubed root this time, we'll have to cube both sides of the equation. Then we end up with 2x plus 5 equals negative 27. The third step is to solve for the variable. So we'll subtract 5 from both sides of the equation, and we get 2x equals negative 32. Now we divide both sides of the equation by 2, and we get x is equal to negative 16. So for our last example, we're going to look at why it's important to always check your answer for a radical equation. We have negative 3 times the square root of x equals 15. Again, our first step is to isolate the radical expression. So we'll divide both sides by negative 3, and we get the square root of x equals negative 5. Our next step is to eliminate the radical. So we'll square both sides of the equation, and we get x is equal to 25. So we'll go ahead and check our solution now by plugging the answer into the original equation. We replace x with 25, and once we simplify everything, we end up with something that isn't true. Negative 15 does not equal 15. So after we check over our work and make sure there are no mistakes, we can conclude this equation has no solution. You might have noticed at this step that something was off because the square root of something can never equal a negative. So because radical equations sometimes have no solution, you always need to check your answer. So that's all for this lesson. If this video helped you in any way, please give it a like or let me know in the comments.